Hello, my little math friends. Welcome back to our magical forest where math and friendship grow. Today, we're going on an adventure with Marvin Mouse and his forest friends. They're about to learn something super cool, how to partition or split shapes into equal parts. But what does that mean? Well, it means sharing things fair and square. From muffins to apples and even flat rocks, our friends will learn to discover how to split shapes into halves and fourths. So grab your thinking cap, get cozy, and let's join our forest friends for a fun math journey as we read Forest Friends, Quest for Equal Parts. One bright sunny morning, as the birds chirped and flew, Marvin Mouse had an idea, and he shared it with the crew. Let's go on an adventure. I've got something fun to do. We'll learn about equal parts, and I'll show you how to. Sally Squirrel looked puzzled, her tail fluffed high. What do you mean? Can you clarify? I'll show you how to split down the middle with care, and we'll call it partitioning, fair and square. First up, Marvin took a muffin, warm and round. Let's split it evenly so all parts can be found. Robert Rabbit took a knife, and with a careful line, he cut the muffin in half, making 2 pieces just fine. Look, said Robert, 2 equal parts ready to share. The friends all cheered, feeling quite fair. Now, said Marvin, let's cut it once more and see if we can make quarters, 4 pieces galore. Sally Squirrel grabbed the muffin with care. She folded it gently and looked everywhere. Now I'll cut it, just like I was told, into 4 even parts. How fun to behold. Marvin squeaked, this feels like an increase. 4 pieces now, we all get a piece. Everyone giggled and took some to munch, enjoying the muffin and their perfect lunch. Next up, it was an apple red and bright. Robert Rabbit said, I'll cut it just right. We'll share this fruit, I'll tell you what. I'll slice it in half with 1 careful cut. Sally looked closely and asked with a smile, can we cut it into quarters? Let's try for a while. So Marvin with care took the knife in his paw and cut it again, making 4 parts with awe. Now, said Marvin, I have one more thought. Let's partition something else that we've got. They found a flat rock, smooth and wide. Marvin cried, a perfect place to divide. Sally grabbed some chalk and drew a line straight. 1 line down the middle makes 2. How great! Gina Giraffe said, let me do it with flair. I'll draw more lines, more spots to share. She drew a line across and 1 up too. Now we have 4 parts, each one brand new. Sally smiled and said with glee, let's make 8 parts. Come, follow me. Gina Giraffe bent down with care and drew another line. Now there were 8 to spare. Wow, said Marvin, a good use of arts. We're really getting good at these equal parts. The forest friends laughed and shared with delight. They'd learn how to partition, getting it just right. Shapes and food can be divided with care into equal parts, which is always fair. So they smiled and cheered, their lesson complete. They'd learned about halves, quarters, and eighths, so sweet. With their new skill, they shared everything they found and lived happily in the forest where fairness did abound. Wasn't that a fun adventure with Marvin and his friends? They really knew how to share fairly, didn't they? They used something called partitioning. Can you say that with me? Partitioning. That's right. Partitioning means splitting something into equal parts. If we cut a shape into 2 equal parts, what do we call them? Halves, right. And if we split it again into 4 equal parts, that is called fourths or quarters. Awesome. Now it's our turn. We're going to look at some shapes and see if we can split or partition them, just like Marvin and the crew. All right, if we look at my board, I have a circle, and I want to make sure that it's cut into equal parts. So take a moment and look at the screen. And I'm going to get this ready. Okay, is this circle partitioned or split into equal parts? Yes, I would say yes that it is, so you could give a thumbs up at home. It is divided right down the middle. Now, what about this one? Take a look and tell me what you think. Is this partitioned or split into equal parts or shares? Now, this one's a little easier to see. We have a lot of space on this side, and on this side of our line, we have just a little. Now, the way I like to think about equal parts is with my own children. I have two, so everything needs to be fair, right? So if I were to say that this were a cookie, and I said I'm going to cut this down the middle, and I'm going to share it with both of you. If I cut it right here, first of all, that's not the middle, but also, will one of my children be happy with this size and one be happy with that size? Not at all, I can tell you. So when we are partitioning something, it needs to be equal. Let's take a look at another shape here. What about this triangle? Is this partitioned or split into equal parts? This one's a little tricky because if you're just looking at the space from here to here or the space from here to here, it does at first look like it might be even, but we really have to consider all of this versus all of this. And I know at home that's kind of hard to see. So I have a piece of paper and I'm going to show you here. If this is our triangle and I fold it the way it's folded on the screen here, is this part right here the same? So if I fold it so you can see here, is that the same as this? No, absolutely not. What I would need to do is take it and fold it down the middle this way. So then I have two parts that are equal, this triangle and this triangle. All right, let's get back over here. And I kind of answered this one for you already, but you're smart, you would have known. Is this one partitioned into equal parts? Yes, so we could have said yes there. All right, let's look at another shape. We know from our time together that this is a rectangle. Is this rectangle split into equal parts? Yeah, I would agree. I'd give that one a thumbs up. It looks like it's split into two equal squares. What if I partition this way? Yes, I agree. It is still partitioned into equal parts. Instead of cutting it vertically, I'm cutting or folding horizontally, but this is still the same size as this. Let's try another one. What about this rectangle? The way I've split this one, what do you think? Yeah, this kind of goes back to the example with my kids. If this were a chocolate bar, one of my kiddos is going to be really sad that this is what they get, and the other one would be pretty pumped that they got that one. So I would say no, this one is not partitioned equally. You are doing such a great job with deciding if these are split correctly. Let's look back in our story so we know if something is partitioned equally. How do we really know that? So I'm going to read this page again and then we'll discuss. Sally Squirrel looked puzzled, her tail fluffed high. What do you mean? Can you clarify? I'll show you how to split down the middle with care, and we'll call it partitioning, fair and square. First up, Marvin took a muffin warm and round. Let's split it evenly so all parts can be found. Robert Rabbit took a knife, and with a careful line, he cut the muffin in half, making two pieces just fine. Look, said Robert, two equal parts ready to share. The friends all cheered, feeling quite fair. Now here we have Marvin explaining that by cutting something down the middle, we're partitioning or dividing the object fair and square. If we make the cut anywhere else, the parts will not be the same size or fair. So let me show you an example. I brought some more food. Today I'm going to use a muffin, which I really would like to eat about now. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. If I cut this muffin right down the middle, as close as I can get, then the two pieces are equal or the same. But if I do it again, and I cut it anywhere else, the two pieces are not equal. We can see that, right? We got that part. All right, but what I need to know is why I didn't bring a napkin. Let's try this. What I need to know is if something is partitioned into halves or fourths, how am I going to really know that? So let's take a look. All right, now we've added to the bottom of our story. Now, said Marvin, let's cut it once more and see if we can make quarters, 4 pieces galore. So I'm going to pause here for a minute and bring you back to the muffins. Let's take the one that I cut correctly, that I had cut in half. Now, if I'm going off of here, Marvin says I can cut it once more. So if I do this and I cut it off to the side, I'm going to have the same problem I had here. So I really need to make sure I'm cutting down the middle. That's right. So if I cut down the middle here, it looks like, that's pretty, it looks like I have 4 quarters that look pretty equal to me. All right, so I think we're doing pretty good so far. Let's take a look back at the screen. And we have a couple examples here. We already said we agree that this is partitioned into equal parts or shares, right? Yep, we talked about my kids. It needs to be the same on both sides. So if we do what Marvin said and we cut it again, what do we have? Yeah, now we have quarters and all 4 of them are the same. So again, yes, this would be partitioned equally into quarters. All right, let's take a look at this example. We already said that this was partitioned correctly or split into 2 equal halves. What if we split it again? I want to do what Marvin said. I'm going to cut it in half one more time. Whoa, whoa. What happened? What went wrong? Yeah, I did not do what Marvin told me to do. I made another cut, but I didn't cut it down the middle. So I need to try this again. What if I move my cut to here? Now do I have equal parts? I do. This is more fair and square. I have 4 quarters and those are all equal. I could also say fourths. So let's say those 2 terms together. Say quarters and fourths. Very good. All right. Now we're going to play a little game. Let's clear the screen here. It's all about food today. So here's what I have on the table. I have 3 tortillas that I've already cut to make it a little easier on the table. Which tortilla is partitioned in halves? That's right. This one here in the middle. This one's partitioned into halves. And how do we know that? That's right, because 2 people can share it equally. So if I was going to share this with a friend, we each get a piece and it's the same size. All right. What about the one that's partitioned into quarters or fourths? Yeah, if you said the first one, you're correct. The first one has pieces that are all the same size, and there are 4 of them. Now, how many people could share that? You are correct. 4. 4 people could share that equally. Now, can we say anything about this one on the end? I mean, there's a lot we could say. It's a tortilla, but no, it's not cut into halves or fourths. I actually have how many pieces here? 1, 2, 3. And we're not really talking about that today, so we'll leave that one to the side. All right, let's do some more examples on the board. All right, let's quickly check what you remember about partitioning into fourths. Okay, so I'm going to give you a second to look at the screen. At home, I'm going to go through one at a time. You're just going to yell out yes or no if it is partitioned or split into 4 equal parts. Okay, so take a second and look, and then I'll start asking. Okay, so what about this rectangle? Is it split into 4 equal parts? Yes, that is in fourths. What about this one, our circle? This is tricky. It is split into equal parts, but what am I looking for? Fourths. So this would be a no. What about this one? No, definitely not. This one only has 3 parts. We don't want that one. How about this square? Nope. Again, that has 3 parts. We were getting there, but not quite. What about this one? Yes. Equal fourths. What about this one? Again, 4, all the same size. Good. What about this one up here? Good. This one does have 4 parts, but they're not equal, and that's what we need to remember. And then what about this one? Yes, correct. All right, so taking a look at that, you did a pretty nice job being able to determine which one is partitioned or split into fourths. Now, we're going to go back to the tortillas for just a minute. I have a question that's been bugging me, and it's this question. As a whole, an object, a tortilla, a muffin, anything, a shape, is partitioned or split into more and more equal parts. What happens to the size of each part? Okay, so we're going to experiment. We're going to look back here at the tortillas, and this tortilla is in halves. Oops, this one right here. All right, and this one is in fourths. Here's one piece of the half, and here's one of the fourths. What do you notice? Yeah, 1/2 of the tortilla is larger than 1/4 of the same size tortilla. So we could say that the parts are smaller the more we cut, right? Let's keep experimenting and see. I'm going to take maybe this one because it's already cut. Actually, let's do a new one. Hang with me. We're going to cut this one. There's half. Marvin told me I have to cut in half again. That's going to give me fourths. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this one into eighths. In the story, we heard about the rock that they had. They had a flat rock that they wanted to partition into eighths. So we're going to do that here. That's pretty good. Now it reminds me of pizza. Okay, so here's our half. Here's our fourth. This one would be considered an eighth. What do you notice about the size as we keep going? Yeah, it gets smaller and smaller. So the answer to my question then would be that as a whole is partitioned or cut or split into more and more parts, what happens to the size of the part? It gets smaller. Good job. All right, let's move our tortilla mess. Okay, let's take a look back at the screen. We're going to do this again, but with a different shape. Okay, so this one is a chocolate bar that we've bought, we've unwrapped, we did start to take a bite of, but let's focus on this one. Okay, so we're going to use the board for this. I'm now going to partition it into halves. So I've put my line down the middle, and here's what I have. Okay, 2 equal rectangles. Then Marvin told us we need to partition it again in the middle equally, and now we have quarters. 4 parts, so that makes quarters or fourths. And finally, we're going to partition it into eighths. Okay, everyone following me so far? Now, let's compare those. So I took a little snippet from each of those problems. And just to make sure that this isn't just about the tortillas in a circle, let's shade these in. So if I did 1/2 of this one, so one piece, which is a half, it would be all of this. Then if I did a quarter, or 1/4, it would be this piece. And then if I went a little further and did the eighth, it would be this piece. If you are a chocolate lover like myself, which one of these sizes would you want to eat? The eighth, the fourth, or the half? I'm going to want the half, right? So we can see that the pieces get smaller the more we partition or cut. Now, I have one more activity that I want us to do before we close for today, and I have another question. So here's my question. How can I relate what I know about partitioning shapes to telling time on a clock? I don't know if any of your brains got there on their own when we were thinking, but as I was looking at the tortillas and thinking about the half and the quarter and whatnot, I started thinking about a clock. So let's take a look. This type of clock is called an analog clock. What do we know about the shape of this? Yeah, it's a circle. And what did we just learn about partitioning a circle into equal parts? We can what? We can split it in half. And so we're going to magically do that. Okay? So if we split it in half, we're left with 2 of what shape? These would be 2 half circles. So I have this side is a half circle, this side is a half circle. Now, here's what I know. Each time the minute hand goes around the whole circle, all the way around like this, that is what? 1 hour. Good. Erase that. So if the minute hand goes around half of the circle, then we could say right here, this is 1/2 or half of an hour. For example, all right, let's take a look at this clock. If you're looking here, we know that this clock shows 4 o'clock. If we move the minute hand all the way to the 6, which is halfway around the clock, we can say it is now 4:30, right? We know that the minute hand in blue here started up at the 12 and made it a half circle around the clock, which I've shown here in yellow. That tells us that half of an hour went by. Okay? What time does this clock show again? 4:30. Okay. Now, let's take a look here. This clock is a digital clock. Okay? This one was analog. This one is digital. At 4:30, this clock shows 4 hours and 30 minutes. 30 minutes is the same as a half hour. So when we say 4:30, we're saying 4:30 or 4 hours and 30 minutes. Let's try another one. Okay, take a look at this clock. What time does this analog clock show? I see my hour here at the 9, and I see down here on the 6. So this is 9:30 or 9:30. Again, I know that the hour hand in red is pointing to the 9, so that's the hour. And I know that when it was 9 o'clock, the minute hand was on the 12, and now it has traveled all the way right here, a half circle to the 6, which is now 9:30. So I want you to think about what digital clock would match this one. I have 2 examples here. So help me out. Which digital clock is going to match our analog clock for 9:30? Okay, you can say up or down. Yeah, up, right? The one on top. 30 minutes is the same as a half hour. So when we say 9:30, we're saying 9:30 or 9 hours and 30 minutes. All right, math friends, I have been having such a good time with you today. Thank you for joining me as we went on a quest for equal parts. I enjoyed learning how to partition shapes and foods into equal halves and fourths. I learned that the more times we split a shape or a tortilla into equal parts, the smaller those parts are. You can practice partitioning shapes at home by folding a piece of paper or even a paper plate and seeing what you come up with. I brought one to show you as an example. You've already seen me fold my triangle paper. So here's an example that I have here, just a plain old piece of computer paper, and we can practice folding this to find equal parts. I could take this and show my sister and say, what do you think? Are these partitioned into equal parts? And she would say yes, because this side is the same as this side. I could do it again and say, okay, let's fold this way. Now do I have equal parts? I could ask her about this piece and this piece, or I could even do all 4 here and say, are these 4 pieces the same? All right, so you can do a lot with just a piece of paper or even a paper plate. All right. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you keep investigating, keep having fun, and I'll see you later.